Hi, everyone, and welcome. It is June the 11th, and it's amazing to think that it's been 3 years almost now since the launch of Reconnecting Workspaces. So it is good whether are here live or whether you are here asynchronously. We have people coming in live, some bots as well, as always. So I'm going to let Stephanie in. I'm going to let Ivana in, who are now live. Welcome to both of you. Good to see you. We've got bots outside our door as always, which seems to be a typical Tuesday activity. So, Steph, hope that you're well from maybe your cottage or the
Yep.
camp. You call it camp.
Camp. It's a camp
The
in Maine.
camp. Fantastic. Well, apropos and hey to you, Ivana. How you doing?
Good,
Good.
thank you. Hi,
All
Steph.
right, we've got our
Hello.
usual pilot's assistants out. Just a reminder, in today's world of AI change, we only let humans in the room. It's part of our commitment to upholding confidentiality and ethical integrity. So welcome. Today's topic is all about coaching many and change. And I am recording. Feel free at any time to take yourself off video. You know, we are well known as an organization here at Potentials Realized for our work in coaching, but many of you might not have seen the through line of why I became a coach. And it was really to help my team, the people that I worked with, which were namely nations, communities, think about how they wanted to change, right? It was about gaining more tools on helping people set vision and set the roadmap towards where they wanted to go. So our mandate here at Potentials Realized is to leverage coaching to support leaders, teams, and team members one conversation at a time. And I'm really excited because I think, we are here in 2024. Change is happening at a pace like never before. And I want to get you started in today's call by thinking about, what are the changes that you have seen in the last 10 years, right? So take yourself back to 2014. What were you doing? What did your work look like? How did you work? Even for me, someone who has worked for 20 years in a remote environment, in a business that was virtual. I think about 2014, we were just about to launch virtual facilitation essentials. We were embracing Zoom, which the first version of Zoom came out about 2013, 2014. And that's not that long ago, 10 years ago. I was joking with my son the other day, and something had come on the news saying something like in 2007. He was 2 years old, right? He's 19 now. But I said, 2007 is the year that we got the iPad. And think about, just how technology has really changed the way we work. So here we are, 2024. Many writers, many experts would assert we're in some of the greatest revolution that the world has ever seen. And some of it is because of technology, right? Like one of the big changes, even in 2024, has been how AI has really become a fabric of so much of our work and our world, whether it is sending, bots to sit in rooms so that they can transcribe what's going on in rooms, or whether it's looking at our vehicles. I got a new vehicle at the end of November. It has that self-driving function. It has a self-parking function. It's beautiful. I love the car to drive, but I have to also be careful that I'm controlling it enough, because it will take over when I'm driving on like 2-lane roads where I have always been taught stay more to the right, because if you're wanting to avoid a head-on collision in a 2-lane highway, you got to stay to the right. You can't drive right in the middle, which is where the car wants to drive. So I offer these up because change is everywhere, and it's changing the way we work. It's changing the way we operate. It's changing the way we team. And so what I found very interesting this year is the resurgence of the requests that are coming my way as a coach and as a speaker around change. It's been 2 years or a year and a half since I did my most popular TED Talk, my second TED Talk, Coaching Teams Through Chaos. I probably could have just called it Coaching Teams Through Change, because really it's based on how do we help teams and leaders thrive in times of ongoing disconnect, disruption, etc. And so I found myself this year doing more back in person work, even having to travel 5 hours, drive 5 hours each way to work with a group of 100 leaders a few weeks ago. It was wonderful, because what it also reminded me is that as much as the world changes, change is change is change. And the way we react to change hasn't really changed that much. So what I would love to do to bring you in the room physically, whether you're here live or asynchronously, is to take a look at our word cloud today. And if you would like, you can stamp or you can just literally write down these words. But as you think about the changes that are happening around you, what is important? And I'd like to invite you to please circle them, highlight them in any way, because I'm going to run through some of these words that are really critical to what we know about change. It's about community, it's about intentionality, it's about learning, it's about mindset, it's about results, and of course, relationships. It can be about resilience, but it can also be about resistance, right? That's another sort of dichotomy that starts to show up. It's about adaptability. It's about the iceberg, which has all of those things that we can see, and also the things under the waterline that we can't see, our assumptions, our perspectives, our values. Change is also about collaboration, because in a rapidly changing environment, we can't work like we used to work. We need to learn how to work differently. We might need new skills that we don't bring. What is still important now are things like our vision, etc., etc. Other word that I wanted to highlight, which I don't see coming out. Oh no, it was a circled adaptability. And notice how big that word is, right? When I used to lead teams truly on the edges of change and rebuilding, the number one skill set that I would hire for, it wasn't about, did you have a master's degree? It was like, how did you demonstrate adaptability? How could you demonstrate that you had to pivot, learn on your feet, innovate, create from sometimes nothing. So again, change is here. What I wanted us to do today, because chances are it's not just me, but you're also going to be getting requests. What do you have in your toolbox? I wanted to just get us thinking as coaches to 3 tools, keeping it simple, because part of the mantra of what we talk about here as group and team coaches is keeping it simple. And as relationships change, as results change, as there's so much toing and froing and change, how do we keep it simple? Now, one of the pain points, and I want to draw your attention to a word sort of on the bottom right, is culture. Is the culture of our organization or team changing at the speed it needs to change? I just had 2 minutes before our call today, so I flipped on over to the Toronto Star, right? Circuit always gives me a snapshot as to what's happening in my city of birth, the city that I do a lot of work out of. And one of the top headlines was a note about the wonderful mayor, Olivia Chow, advocating for organizations to bring their workers back to the downtown core 4 or 5 days a week. Toronto has always struggled with one of the longest commute times in North America. It can take some people 3 hours a day of commute to get to the downtown core. So we are one of the cities in the world that really has embraced hybrid work and even remote work because of the intense cost of commute time. There's also an opposite side of the debate, which is that of real estate. The downtown core has become hollowed out. We have huge organizations that have made their money through buildings, and those buildings now sometimes are sitting at 50% open. We also had a very thriving downtown business community, a downtown pathway, which stretches, I think, 20 kilometers if you add it up, more than 20 kilometers. And many of those small businesses have gone out of business because there's not the foot traffic downtown. So, even with something like a shift to hybrid, we're still seeing tremendous economic ripple effect. And so there's a push on right now to say, can we bring people back in? Well, that's a change on multiple levels. Am I willing to get back in the car? Am I willing to commute 3 hours a day times 5 days a week, 15 hours of my life every week? So I offer this up because as coaches, we sometimes get drawn into that conversation, right? We have a client who comes and says, you know what, I'm being asked to come back to the office. I don't know if I can do it. So what do we do? What are the tools that we have at our disposal? So I'm going to just stop my share. Before I go there, though, I know we got Steph and Ivana on the line as you went through this quick exercise. What's important, for you with change right now and the work that you do as a coach? Ivana, do you want to talk about sort of the perspective you bring on change right now in your world?
Sure. Yeah, if I think about just both the groups and the individuals I'm working with, I think it's a lot of the work that we all do. I do primarily personal transition, which is change, and really helping people connect to who they are. And so there's a lot of like anchoring and grounding on values, vision, those types of things. And even I'm just thinking about the group that I'm doing in Italy, and they're really working. I was saying this to Jen earlier, like there's layers of, I'm doing a group coaching program and it's on the topic of English development in an Italian culture, right? And so there's just layers. So part of change to me is like exploring the layers to this change, even for them in their development of the English language. So I think change is just, it's everywhere. And you're either going to ride the bus or you're going to be, left behind, I'm going to say. So I think tools and skills for all of us are fundamental to be able to navigate this change
Yeah. And part of it
and
is
change in
mindset,
general.
right? And I'm not going to get too much
Absolutely.
into Carol Dweck's work, but like I think that's a really useful whole body of work that we could be pulling on or encouraging our clients to be looking at. Just as you said as well, like it's everywhere. It's on so many layers. So what have we developed? And I didn't bring these in, but just a reminder of the 7 C's plus an IV, right? There's sort of 7 areas we want to be working with leaders and teams to develop their culture, their collaboration, their community, their communication, their clarity, and I'm missing one, of course, their culture. Culture is the number 7. What is interesting as well, I mentioned already the iceberg, right? In an iceberg situation, we've got results, which is often the alluring area that we're coaching to as coaches, but we want to help people and teams and groups reverse engineer what is leading, what are the invisible, often subconscious elements that are leading to those behaviors and therefore the results. So our mindset, our value system, our beliefs, our habits, these all get disrupted in times of change. And it can lead us, even as change ready people, it can lead us to resilience or it can lead us to resistance, right? There are things that I resist. I am like feeling it. I said to someone the other day, I feel like Gumby. And if you're not familiar with Gumby, it was this 1970s, 80s cartoon character. There was Gumby and Pokey, and Gumby was this boy man who could like stretch. And I feel like, I'm still stretching. I'm working between 2 geographic locations. I'm supporting parents and son. I'm supporting the business. The business is going in different directions with different legs. And so, some days it's like, how much more stretch do I have? And flip side of that, what can I do to resource myself? How do I ground myself? And that's my time in nature, really. Like this morning, I walked in and I thought, as I watched the sun coming over the hills onto the lake and the loons and, all the beautiful things. We do know that, building resilience and building muscles around getting grounded in whiplash change can be really, really important. Now there are other tools. So before I go there, Steph, anything you want to know? Like you're working out of a different location. So that's even a layer of change. How do you get back to your work routine? Is there a work routine in a new environment? So what would you like to add?
Yeah, it's a new work routine, but I will say that so flexibility which I didn't see
Yes.
that word on there.
No.
It's a little different than adaptability, but flexibility is important as well, to be able to shift. But I work a lot with people who are in career transition and who have, through no fault of their own, lost their jobs and are now plunged into this new world of job search. And it has changed. I was working with one person that Monday, and he it was just yesterday, thank goodness. He had been with the same organization for 20 years. So now the world of job search is tremendously different. And he was, very overwhelmed. But, with my support, we'll get him through it, which is, my part of my role is to be supportive and encouraging. But, so talking about change, I see it constantly in my work. And resilience, the people who are resilient are the ones, and who have the growth mindset, are the ones who are the most successful in pivoting to a new job after going through that change.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. And what I find really interesting too is the way we search for new jobs. Like, it's not just now, like for many years, we've talked about how perhaps the old traditional employer contract of you'll have a job for life has been broken. Like, it really is broken now. But then how do people even go and apply for a new job, right? Like the whole search of the algorithm as well. How do you prepare your resume so that it can even be seen? Because so much of it has moved into an algorithm-based world. So this is where having a partner, especially a coach, could be really valuable. And it's interesting, I had a request recently for some career coaching, and I said, you know what, I am not the right person for you. I'd love to coach you, but you really need someone who understands like today, this moment, not last year, not 10 years ago, but this moment, what's happening in the world of career development, because the pace of change is also changing so rapidly. So with that, here's a couple of things. Again, we can all have different tools in our toolbox. I'm sort of lasering us into just, very high level, what's important during times of change. And some of this, I just wanted to orient it because people are always like, well, you've written so many books. Where would I learn more about it? A lot of change. While I touch on it in earlier books, this is really the heart of the Reconnecting Workspaces series. So Reconnecting Workspaces isn't just about helping people thrive in virtual or remote settings, but it's about the hybrid world. It's about thriving in ongoing change. And one of the things we continue to see, which, not surprising for me, earlier this week was new stats, right? Like what happens when we're buffeted by ongoing change? Like, there's a weight to it. And that's where burnout is really becoming endemic. As I went to work with these leaders a few weeks ago, we were talking about that tension of resilience versus resistance. And how do we keep resourcing challenge or crisis after crisis after crisis? And, sometimes we do need to step away. Sometimes we also need to chunk it down. And that's where the 90-Day Guide to Success comes in. It was the book number 2 in Reconnecting Workspaces, came out in the fall of 2021. And it's really been used now for almost 3 years by leaders with their team members, people who are getting onboarded or reboarded into new roles, because it takes a bite-sized view at all the myriad of things that you might need to be looking at, working on. And it's interesting. As my son stepped into his first formal office job, I've been asking him every week, like, which one of these topics are important for you? Because he's never been in a job before, an office job. And he's like, oh yeah, I really did need to spend time today on this. So I'm going to be doing a specialized training this summer for people who want to use the 90-Day Guide. It's going to be a short one, just 8 hours, Mondays 1:30 to 3:30, starting on July 8th. And it's really for coaches who are looking for resources to take to their leaders or use themselves with new leaders, new employees, on topics related to sort of onboarding, talent, or even some of the core areas, because I think we get requests and it's like, OMG, what would I do if I get a request around negotiation? That's not something I do, but there is enough for you to get the program started or the idea started. So if you even have some sort of interest, just reach out to me. This could be a small, agile training, not a big rollout, but I do want to be bringing this to life because one of the creative projects this summer is actually developing a card deck for people to be using around the 90-day guide on their phones so that it can be self-coaching, self-directed. And with that, why I'm so passionate about this is because coaching at its beginnings was all about change, right? We look at John Whitmore, and John Whitmore, when he developed the GROW model, it was simply, what's your goal? G, our reality. Where are you now? And where do you want to go? That's really the heart of what we ask every time. Where are you now around what's important to you and where do you want to go? And what is important, like what is possible as you move from where you are to where you want to go? That is the options phase of the GROW model. O for options. Well, I could do this, I could do that, I could do something else. And then we have the W of GROW, which of course is the what's. What are you committed to? What are you going to do? By when? How will I know? And so sometimes people are really clear on where their goal is or where they want to go. Other people I found, they're not as clear on what they want to go. So some of you know that I really love bringing the Draw Your Future work. I'm a Draw Your Future certified facilitator. And I've had the privilege of using this with teams and organizations since 2020. I'm not going to take you through the whole process because it is a process that is proprietary, and I can now talk about sort of my own experience with it. And some of you know earlier this year, let's see if I can bring this up. Earlier this year, I was part of not just a Guinness World Record attempt, but actually a successful Guinness World Record. I hold a Guinness World Record with 513 other people around the world for the largest video-based vision board session. And we use Patty Jablonski's Draw Your Future, where you literally are drawing out, as you can see with my handwriting and my drawing out my current reality, January 19th, 2024, to some of my desired reality. And she had us really think about sort of a year or 5 years down the road. I always think about a year down the road. So, 2024, if you look to the current reality, I've moved. We have a great team here at Potentials Realize. The PR, we offer a lot of different things. I'm blending my time between Friday Harbor, which is Canada's biggest 4-season resort, which I love, and Muskoka, and also the Caribbean. I do a lot of different things. I have my new car that I was talking about, and I work out. I try to work out every day, although that's dropped a little bit this summer, but that's my current reality. But then, what do I want to put in the future? When I was first asked to do this in 2020 by Patty, when I met her, and she was a mentor to me, actually helped me really get through my first TED Talk, and learn to be a facilitator around this. I put down 2 things. I put down that I wanted to get back to the Caribbean, which you can see here. And this is obviously like a 2.0, but I've always wanted to upgrade the cottage. And the cottage has really had an upgrade this summer because we're living out of it, not just for like a week at a time. We're living out of it for 4.5 months. So we've had to do a new roof. I'm now, when the bugs go, going to be doing work outdoors. But it was really interesting to think about even like the roof, right? This is what I drew back in January before I really knew that my son would get a job up here. Even where I live, this is my balcony. I have a big patio. And part of what I love and could only imagine was that I would be able to sit on my veranda at night. And this is an amphitheater sort of pier area. So I get to sit out, they bring bands in, and I don't even have to go down to the pier. I can just sit on the veranda and listen to it when I'm home, which is really, really cool. Swimming is a big part for me. And what was interesting when the pool reopened last month, people were like, you're back, like you're here. Like we knew that you were here, but you're here and you're swimming every weekend. So I go down and I swim, and it just brings such joy. I have some goals this year to really continue to expand our superpower quiz assessment. What's been interesting, and this was before I had even done the charms, right? Charms were just a little glimmer in my eye. The charms set, Conversation Sparker Charms, have now gone out to several hundred, which have sped forward our numbers on the superpower quiz. So I share some of these very specific things because if we're not visioning boldly, we may be holding ourselves back. I remember sort of saying, oh, will I really get the superpower quiz to 25,000 coaches? Maybe in another year or two, but like if I don't stretch that far, it's never going to go anywhere. So what is your reality and where are you and what's it going to take to get there? Because to move from where we are to where we want to go, we need to come up with some different things. So my 2024 is to be continuing to share my work in different ways. And Ivana and I have an exciting announcement of our podcast, which will be launching soon. We hope, and I trust that by the end of the month, it'll be live. And I think in today's world, it's really important that I keep doing things. I've learned as an author, my books take a couple of years to get traction. And so how do I keep talking about it? Because people are like, oh, I know you from your book, Effective Group Coaching. Yeah, I've written 6 more since then. So it really is about small steps. And my commitment this year has been, and I started it in January. I use a little timer, which I have right here, 24 minutes a day to my vision or to my whatever I'm focusing on. So the last 6 weeks, it's been clearing like literally 96 years of stuff at the cottage because stuff accumulates over 90 years. And I'm only now 5 weeks in, 6 weeks in, just starting to see some progress, if you can imagine just the amount. And so whether it's the morning or night, irregardless, I set my little timer and work on that along with other projects. And then, there's also a mindset piece around this. I have to keep trusting and believing, even when things go a little offline, a little cray-cray as they do in my world, that it's going to get done. It's going to happen. And sometimes those paths off to the side are really valuable. So invitation, if you haven't revisited your vision lately, think about maybe spending some journaling time. Think about where you are, where you want to go, and what's it really going to take to move from A to B. Put a date on it because it's really cool to be able to go back to this and see what did you want? Like I know January 19th, I was just starting to think about Conversation Sparker Charms. I hadn't got the charms together. I hadn't had them as a whole set. I think about how much joy that's giving me and how much joy it's giving people who are purchasing them, which is really, really fun for me. And this year has become a product year because the economy is different. And so, this summer, the charms have morphed into cards, 3 card projects that I'm really excited and working about. But what's interesting as I'm working on the cards, it's bringing old relationships back into my world, people that I've collaborated with even a decade ago, and they just show up on Zoom. And I'm like, that is so interesting. I never would have thought that you'd be here, but here you are in this space. So vision, very important. Tool number 1. So tool number 2 is the charms. And if you want to know more about them, I'm going to share the little video I'm going to stop my share because I embedded this week's video because I want to actually take you through how you might use the charms. So back in, you play this, you can find us on YouTube. My hope is that at least twice a month, I'll do the Conversation Sparker Charms. The video is only about 1 minute to 2 minutes, but as I go through this week's charms, think about how they might show up or think about what resonance there is.
Happy Monday, everyone. It is Jennifer Britton, creator of the Conversation Sparker Charms, and it is Monday, so it's time to do a poll. As you will see, if you order a set of these, lots of ways to use them. I personally like to use them as a start to the week just to see what might come up. So this is a set that actually is going to be going out. You might notice the purple, which of course is going to someone who is a culture wizard. So I'm going to just pick 3 random charms as always. 1, 2, 3. And these are from B. So there are actually 2 sets of Conversation Sparkers. So charms, you might not have seen this one. We've got the squirrel on a branch. Interesting. We've got 3D. So how might 3D be showing up in your world? And we've got a rose with a lovely little spotted backdrop that actually reminds me a little bit of coral. So you might look at that as coral, or you might look at that as a rose. So those are our 3 for the week. Take a moment, think about how these might show up or how they connect with where you're going this week. If you're interested in purchasing a set, head on over to conversationsparker.com.
So again, here's what I want us to do. Take 30 seconds right now. And with these 3 in mind, the squirrel on a branch, 3D, and the rose, or flip side to that, perhaps a piece of coral. What importance or impact might this have for your week or around change, right? You could also think about this as, how are these metaphors useful as we think about change? I'm going to give us a minute to just grab a pen, piece of paper, sketch them out, and just see what emerges in terms of your thinking, and then we'll share whatever insights come up. Take a moment.
Hmm.
That's just about a minute, and I'm going to just kick off by sharing mine if it's of any interest or use to anyone else. But, what always strikes me with squirrels or chipmunks, because there's a lot around where I am right now, they're always preparing, they're always busy, they're also playing. I spent a few minutes watching these 2 chipmunks chasing each other around a tree the other day. I couldn't understand what this noise was until I looked closely. It was 2 chipmunks like literally running around the tree, on the tree. But I think there's a piece of change. If we look at change, like, are we on the bridge? Are we ready to cross the bridge? Are we preparing to cross the bridge? And for me, the 3D means, like, is it real? Like, am I looking at this in like a really conceptual 2D landscape, or am I truly bringing myself in as a 3D experience, looking at all the layers of change? And then the rose bush reminded me of how important it is for resourcing and tending after things. A couple nights ago, I headed home just for the night, just for like not even 10 hours. And as I stepped into my condo, I realized that my rose bush, I was given like a rose bush, not roses, for Mother's Day. And it was really dry last time I was down. So I watered it up and I put it in a spot that I thought would just be good for light, but not too much light. But it got too much light. And so it was starting to die. But as I tended it, I realized I can actually bring it up here and put it in the garden. Because one of the things my great grandmother did 100 years ago almost was plant roses, and those roses come back every year. So I'm going to plant the sort of dying rose bush, which I know as a gardener will still live, beside hers, and actually put a little stake with my name on it and the year, because I don't know if Matthew will have kids or who will find it. But I think there's something too about, helping things thrive through different phases as well. And I see that even on a family level with my dad. I get to spend about an hour or 2 with him every day. And he continues to thrive. And one of the nurses said to me yesterday, he's like, I think you're coming in every day, Jen, is really making a difference. Like, he is better today than he was 5 weeks ago. And I'm like, yeah, well,
Wow.
that's because I think I know that he's enjoying it. And he even says that to me every day. It's so good to see you. I wait every day to see you. So, how do these elements just anchor and feed all of you. So Ivana or Steph, is there a story you want to offer just to sort of say how you might use something like this? Steph?
So I love the concept of the charms and having them to relate to as a something to anchor you for the week, and something to give a visual to something that's important to you, and use it as an anchor. And I just, not to correct you, I guess it's all perception, but that 3D to me
Yeah.
resonates as the Hindu symbol of something.
Ooh.
And I was trying to look it up real quick, but my phone
Okay.
being cooperative. And that particularly resonates with me because I've been trying to get interconnectedness, and to make the time to meditate and to get that connection with my inner being. So anyway, so I do, I can relate. Like, I was watching a squirrel this morning trying to cross the street, taking 3 steps forward, stopping. And I was like, you are so lucky the light is red. But and then the rose, I have a begonia that is in the shape of a rose outside my front door. And it's just brings me such joy every
Mhm.
time I go in and out of the house when I see that begonia in, and trying to also be more present, being up here in the country, and to have appreciation and gratitude for all the beauty around me. So yeah, so there's a lot of squirrels up here too.
Love it. Well, thank you for sharing. And Ivana, is there anything you want to add on? Maybe something similar or different tangents too?
Yeah, thanks. So for me, the squirrel was really about just reminding me about agility and being on the skinny branch and trusting that I'll land on my feet, because they always seem to land on their feet. So that
They
was the
do.
squirrel for me. And then I just went on your 3D piece and really around just like perspective and just like expanding my lens, like taking greater, like, I mean, like when you go to a 3D movie, you can see more depth. So it's kind of like, to me, it was that. And then the rose was really about like, there's the beauty, but there's also the thorns, which is all part of the journey and growth and evolution of change.
Love it. So different perspectives. That's something like that I really
Happy
take
Monday.
from this. And I'll invite you because I hope to do a couple a week, right? Like it really will depend, but you will probably find some, and this is one, like you could go look at the earlier, I think that was May's. So let's
Yeah.
do one more. I know
Jen,
we're
can I
coming to
just
time.
say something?
Yeah, please go
Jen, may
ahead.
I add something?
Yeah.
I have a set of the Sparker charms in Italy, and I never even thought to do this. So thank you, because I love this idea, because I've been using it with my groups, but I want to use it for myself just to kind of ground me. I love it. So thank you for this exercise.
You're welcome. Well, here's another one, and this is one of our other products, which is the square journaling cards. You might have square journaling cards, which are more textual, right? And these are based off, well, we're now in probably our 10th year of it. I do a Saturday weekly journaling prompt. And so for the first 52 weeks, 1 year, I had our VA at the time, Lindsay, put all of the prompts into these square cards. They launched December 2019. People were using them in organizations, and don't you know what happened a few months later? We went digital. So these cards also became digital. But what's interesting, right, is like you could be in a team meeting and you can just pick one, and that can be also an inquiry for the week. Or you could, as I did in 2020, then sort of bring this and say, here's a few questions for us to think about. Pick one and journal on it. So, journaling prompts can also bring us some new ideas. I have to say, in sharing this a lot in 2020, 2021, and 2022, two areas really gravitated to people. Number one, the upper right, in the next 24 hours. That always seemed to capture people's attention, perhaps because of the moment in time we were at, but there is something to be said about urgency and getting it done, whether it's memorable or not. And then the other one is the anchor on the opposite side of the one thing. What's the one thing? And that might be, what's the one thing I can do? What's the one thing I can be? What's the one thing I can clear? But, each one of these questions really can provide a great conversation sparker, and they are part of the conversation sparker decks. So you can find those at our Potentials Realized store at potentialsrealized.com. And they came as the second, well, actually third part of the conversation sparker deck. So these cards were inspired by, and I'll just show you, someone just mailed me a series. For years, I've used the beautiful cards of Visual Explorer, which are full page cards, which I love, but they take up a lot of room. And so for years, I would travel the world using these with teams, with groups. I brought them forward again 2 weeks ago when I was working with this group, large group, 100 people, leaders. And I just put them on the table. And our topic was change. When we're working with non-coaches, right, some of these practices of saying, pick a card, pick a visual, can be quite disconcerting. And just like the trust in the process of pick a visual and talk to your neighbors about what it represents for you. For some people, this process of going to their visual part of the brain was really a big challenge and a bit discombobulating, which became a great sort of context layer for this 3.5-hour conversation around change. How is what we just did a representation of how people feel every day on your team? It's, like I'm being asked to do something completely out of my comfort zone. What do you mean? And there's always different layers. So again, I would say if you use visual decks, opportunity to bring those out, see how people resonate. And it may be I'm resonating with the image. It may be this is really feeling a bit weird. If people feel trustworthy, they'll say, I'm discombobulated with this. You're asking me to do something that I'm not used to doing. But we are operating now in a world, career-wise, where we're going into the office and overnight, things might have just completely changed. The people, the portfolio of work, the way we work, etc. And I think, we want to make it okay for people to feel that that's like really a stretch, because most people are being admonished for it. Again, going back to where I started this conversation, 42% of Canadians right now are feeling burnt out. Why? Too much work, not enough resources, lack of managerial support. People are going and raising their concerns with their leaders and they're being fired days later. So do we speak up? Do we just internalize it, which we know as coaches is just going to create toxicity? How do we make it okay? And with the leaders that we're working with, say, change is hard. It's gonna blank you up sometimes, turn your world on its head. So how do you become more empathetic with the fact that people are struggling and strong people are struggling? And it's okay to say, I don't get it, but we shouldn't be punishing people for that and saying, I need a little bit more support. So with that, I hope today has been valuable. Again, to sort of recap our 3 areas, we did visual cards, we did charms, and we talked about the importance of vision, whether you're using a process or not. For those that are interested in today's topic, really think about maybe joining me for those 4 Mondays in July to go through the 90-day guide for success, which could be a resource for you. And just a reminder of some of our supports around change. So I continue to love doing team days and retreats, even if it's a half day, keynotes on change. We've got the TEDx talks, coaching teams through chaos. What I find interesting is in the last 2 months, it's gone from 31.1 thousand people viewing my TED Talk to 31.7 thousand people. That's a lot of views in a couple of months. forthcoming, we've got some more visual cards, and then we've got the success training. So book a call, 15 minutes, calendly.com/Jen Britton. Hope that this has sparked something for you. So Steph, Ivana, as we go to wrap up, what is the take forward from today's call for you? Ivana.
Yeah, for me, it's really around that vision and those bold steps. I think it just keeps coming through even with some of the charms, like that trust and that agility. So be bold, speak up, be bold
And trust the skinny branch is going to hold you. I loved how you brought us to the skinny branch, and we've got you frozen.
Mm.
So sometimes we freeze in the process of change. All right, Steph, how about you? I'll bring your voice in next.
So, what sparked for me today is the use of visuals to get out of our thinking brain and into the more creative side, where the thinking brain's the right side, and get into more of the left side of the brain to stimulate ideas and new growth. So.
Yeah.
I really love that. I've been thinking about how to use this more with the clients I work with. So thank you.
Yeah. And I want to, one thing that sort of like went through my mind a couple of weeks ago, as much as I've been using visuals on so many applications, it took me back to these Visual Explorer cards, right? And Center for Creative Leadership, I think, originally framed those cards as with a book that they had published in about 2008, talking about helping leaders work in complex times, right? And what we know about disruption and innovation is we need to think more creatively. So when we're working in structured environments, how do we bring that creativity in? And that's where some of these sparkers can just open up a new way of thinking. Like I loved, Steph, how you pointed us to, oh, this could be, like maybe a Hindi symbol. Oh, wow. Like I'm going to look that up now. Like what new perspective can we be fostering? Because with radical change, and we're not talking incremental change here, we're talking radical change. Paradigm shift and perspectives need to shift. And so how do we start drawing upon resourcing that we might not even be aware of? And now you've given me some new awareness. So with that, thank you. We will be back for another community call in 2 weeks' time. We will also be having a launch call as well. So stay tuned for the launch of the Coaching Many podcast, which will be coming up as soon as Apple approves us, which can take upwards of 2 weeks. So that's where we're sort of holding the fort. Sometime in the next 2 weeks, we'll be doing a launch call. We hope that you'll enjoy our conversations.
And I'm looking forward to Friday and the start of the mentoring.
Yes. Absolutely. So see you 9 a.m. Friday to wrap up the week. All right. Have a good one. See you.
bye,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye. Enjoy.